Hey Commander players, it's EK, your EDH edutainer, and we're switching things up this week by breaking my number one rule for Commander. That's right, we're playing blue this week. Things are going to get a little bit curious this week as we're building around Eloise, Nephalia Sleuth, a new legendary from the Innistrad Midnight Hunt Commander Precons. Eloise may not be the face commander, she's actually hidden inside the Wilhelt zombie precon. But after a bit of investigating, you'll see that she offers a lot of tools to crack a case and your opponent's wide open. Eloise is 3 blue-black for a 4/4 legendary human rogue. Her text box reads, whenever another creature you control dies, investigate. Whenever you sacrifice a token, surveil 1. This pushes Eloise to play a very unique combination of aristocrats and control. Both ends of the playstyle are rewarded by her text box, so we get to very easily take advantage of both, because Eloise lets us build around the two strategies without a huge investment one way or the other. Unlike other aristocrat decks like Korvold, Teysa Karlov, and Chatterfang, which often take the form of proactive game plans, the blue identity of Eloise shines through in her reactive nature. She's always 2 steps ahead of her opponents, as playing Eloise rarely asks you to tap out on your own turn, allowing you to pursue a more reactive game plan filled with decisions and opportunities for interaction. Everything about Eloise lends itself to give you more bang for your buck because each action you take will be more efficient than your opponent's. However, this increase in efficiency often comes with a price. Eloise by nature lends herself to a slow burn, building her engine over time, rather than pushing for big, splashy, and explosive plays. When looking at Eloise, many players are fixated on her Surveil trigger, and while access to card selection is a huge benefit that we can always use, it's practically a bonus compared to the best part of Eloise, which is her Investigate trigger. By building around the Investigate trigger, we get a unique payoff unavailable to other aristocrat decks. If you're getting attacked, block and make some clues to crack later. If you have extra clues and spare mana, hold up interaction during your opponent's turns. If they don't play anything worth interacting with, crack those clues and draw some cards. Eloise rewards you for playing cautiously at every turn and keeping your options open. And if that weren't enough, you'll even get to surveil from cracking your clue tokens. And to make things even better, you get to surveil before you draw your card off the clue thanks to Eloise. Since Eloise is going to produce a ton of clues, which are artifact tokens, we get to take advantage of the improvise and affinity mechanics. And here's a quick refresher on those 2 artifact-centric mechanics. Both allow us to increasingly cheat mana by having more and more artifacts. Specifically, Improvise allows you to tap an untapped artifact you control to pay for the generic mana cost in a spell's total rather than having to pay mana for it. Essentially, it turns our clue tokens into mana rocks. And on the other hand, Affinity for artifacts simply makes spells cheaper to cast for each artifact we control. No tapping necessary. So let's take a look at some examples of these mechanics at work in our Eloise deck. First off, Tezzeret, Master of the Bridge, has a passive ability that gives all of our creatures and planeswalkers affinity for artifacts, making them cheaper to cast. On top of that, this version of Tezzeret weaponizes the sheer volume of artifacts we can create with Eloise, giving us a clear endgame to our strategy. Next up, War of Invention is the blue version of Court of Calling. It's an amazing improvised card that lets us pay X and blue to tutor an artifact with mana cost X into play. We can get anything from Mana Rocks to Bolas Citadel or Inspiring Statuary. Inspiring Statuary gives all of our non-artifact spells Improvise, which means more mana for interaction, more mana for cracking clues, and more mana to just do more things in general. Innistrad Midnight Hunt also introduced another mechanic that has some not so obvious synergies with Eloise, and that's Decay. Decayed creatures sacrifice themselves at the end of combat if they attacked. This means that we've got sacrifice triggers for Eloise without the need for an outlet like Viscera Seer or Ashnod's Altar. Curse of the Restless Dead and Jadar, Ghoulcaller of Nephalia, are going to give us a drip feed of decayed zombies to get incremental value off of by virtue of the game just existing. Our opponents have to play lands, and we've got to get to an end step eventually. We're actually running quite a few drip feed token generators to give us a baseline of fodder to feed into our engine. Classics like Ophiomancer and Bitter Blossom make up the bedrock of our suite. However, unsung heroes like Kalidas, Trader of Get, are sure to get utterly out of hand as the game unfolds. Kalidas is a 3/4 vampire warrior that says, if a non-token creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead and create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. That's a horde of 2/2s waiting to happen when removal gets thrown around, blocks happen, and then some. Plus its graveyard hate, a very welcome addition to our toolbox. Genesis Chamber is another way that we can generate tons of extra fodder as well. For For 2 mana, we get an artifact that makes 1/1 mirror tokens every time a non-token creature enters the battlefield under a player's control. That's 2 for 1 value for 21 creatures. So we've got this horde of creatures that we want to sacrifice. What exactly are we sacrificing them to? Eloise isn't a sack outlet in the command zone. She's just a payoff, so we need an extra piece. Ashnod's Altar, Viserys Seer, and Yawgmoth Thran Physician are iconic, free sacrifice outlets that are going to generate us mana, fix our draws, or give us card advantage while giving us death triggers. New, yet iconic in its own right, is also Witch's Oven. Witch's Oven taps to sacrifice a creature and create a food token. At first glance, it looks like a one-time sacrifice outlet. However, with the addition of Clock of Omens to this Rube Goldberg machine, we can continually untap Oven and set up an infinite combo using Cauldron Familiar. Cauldron Familiar is a 1-mana 1/1 that drains each opponent when it enters the battlefield. We can also sacrifice a food token to bring it back into play. So we can sacrifice the cat to the oven, create a food token, and use that food token as half of the cost to untap the oven with Clock of Omens. If we've got Eloise on the table too, well, we're going to get a clue token from that sequence as well. That's a constant loop of 2 artifacts being generated to continually untap our oven with Clock of Omens. We can also use Academy Manufacturer as a replacement for Eloise in this loop, and Academy Manufacturer might just be the absolute coolest card in Commander right now. It's a 3-mana 1/3 that says if you would create a clue, food, or treasure token, instead create one of each. And our deck makes a ton of clues, a ton of food, and then some treasure as well. So why not make all of it and lean into this junky fodder playstyle? We've got the perfect payoffs for all of this extra junk, and we've already mentioned Clock of Omens, but let's dive into a few more. Time Sieve is an artifact that we can tap and sacrifice 5 artifacts to take an extra turn. This is the type of deck that could potentially take infinite turns if the right combination of cards was present on the board together. With Academy Manufacturer out with a piece that makes any piece of junk, we just need to sacrifice 2 creatures per turn, and we'll have enough to feed into Time Sieve. Alternatively, we can have Eloise out on the table with Witch's Oven. The clue generated by Eloise will make it food as well. And with the loop I mentioned earlier involving Cauldron Familiar, that's infinite food, clue, and treasure tokens. Marionette Master is 4 and 2 black for a 1/3 human artificer that says, whenever an artifact you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to Marionette Master's power. And since Marionette Master has Fabricate, we can either create more tokens to sacrifice, or we can make Marionette Master bigger and drain the table for that much more, that much quicker. Kuldotha Forge Master is a 5-mana 3/5 construct that we can tap and sacrifice 3 artifacts to tutor up an artifact card and put it into play. So let's make that junk work for us in directly finding that clock or that oven. This line lets us find any missing artifact piece that we need for our Rube Goldberg machine. I always pick a secret favorite card in every deck, and this one was surprisingly easy even though it's a blue card, and that's Mechanized Production. For 2 and 2 blue, we can enchant an artifact that we control. At the beginning of our upkeep, we create a token that's a copy of the enchanted artifact. But if we control 8 or more artifacts with the same name as one another, we win the game. There's so many things that this aura can do. We can enchant a clue token and make a DIY Revel in Riches. We can enchant something else and follow through on these Time Sieve loops and use that as a win condition. We can also just make tons of copies of Academy Manufacturer. 1 manufacturer means 1 clue, 1 food, 1 treasure. 2 manufacturers means 3 clues, 3 food, and 3 treasures, and 3 would be 9 of each. Beyond that, that's just absurdity waiting to happen, and we can absolutely indulge in that and win off of that. These engines are sure to hype up your inner Johnny, but let's dial that sentiment up to an 11. Rise and Shine turns a piece of junk into a 4/4 creature that we can go to combat with and get in there, but if we overload it, all of our junk turns into 4/4s. You didn't think I was going to leave you combat step lovers hanging, did you? It's an unexpected gotcha win waiting to happen. Like I mentioned earlier, this deck's top end is much more of a critical mass top end rather than just a bunch of big bombs. However, we've got a few that are sure to make things really fun. Shark Typhoon checks off all the boxes that we're after with this deck. It makes more creatures for us to sacrifice, however, those flying sharks can pack a pretty big punch too. And with 43 non-creature spells in our deck, there's a ton of fuel for a shark-infested onslaught. Bolas Citadel is also going to do a ton of heavy lifting in this deck. We can get quote-unquote free spells off the top of our library, plus our Rube Goldberg machine can create enough junk to sacrifice to the Citadel to massively drain our opponents, and we can even harken back to those Clock of Omens combos to untap the Citadel and repeatedly activate it for a win as well. To make matters even better, all of those artifact tutoring engines like War of Invention and Kuldotha Forge Master, they can put Citadel directly into play. So I call that a pretty good trade. 3 pieces of junk for a Bolas Citadel. We're going to take that deal every day. Let's break down one last combo, and it's probably the coolest combo that we have in this deck. And this one's built around the enchantment March of the Machines. March of the Machines costs 3 and a blue and makes each non-creature artifact an artifact creature with power and toughness each equal to its mana value. All of our clues, food, and treasure have a mana value of 0. So with Eloise on the table, and thanks to state-based actions, our creature clue tokens die thanks to having 0 toughness, but thanks to Eloise, when a creature dies, we investigate. This is going to make another clue token, which then immediately dies, and so on and so on. Like my previous video, which mentioned a combo involving Realm Razor, we need an outlet for this infinite loop that's just spinning its wheels mindlessly and potentially unstoppably to no end. Thanks to other cards like Zolaport Cutthroat, Bastion of Remembrance, or Disciple of the Vault, we can close that loop and drain out the table in spectacular fashion. Eloise is a really quirky and unique commander to explore because Dimir isn't known for going in on a full-on sacrifice theme. You could even take her in a full-on artifacts direction if you wanted to as well. I'm super stoked that she's been printed because I'm all about seeing color combinations do new things in new, flavorful ways. That's it for this deck tech. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you thought of a card you think should be included or have a commander you'd like to see me brew or break down, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back with another video very soon. Hey, thanks for watching my video. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit the subscribe button, ding the bell icon, and help me fight the evil algorithm overlords and the control players by liking this video and leaving a comment. I'll catch you next time.